forensics is they do exactly that. They show us things in a vacuum. If you look at how most of the interfaces work for this, they show us the file structure. They show us what the file system looks like with directories. They don't show us what that desktop looked like. They don't show us that, oh, not only this file is in this directory, was in their desktop, but it was in the desktop right beside the picture of their parents. Does that mean something? It might. Think of yourself. Think of your own desktop that you have. Your desktop, not on your computer, your desktop at your desk at work. What do you put on your desktop? Information that's important to you. Information that you want to have access to really quick. Pictures of your family, your loved ones, your sporting events that you're interested in, things like that. Okay? If you're SPAF, it's cartoons and jokes. But does that tell us something about SPAF? You bet. But it's stuff that's important to you. The same thing that you do with the physical, we tend to do in the electronic. And this is really how the human-computer interface people have designed this to be that way. Why do you think they call it a desktop? Because we're familiar with what a desktop is. We can make that analogy. So we tend to, as users, use the systems as if they're extensions of physical space. But when we're looking at it with most of the tools, we see it as a file system database structure with no real meaning or connectiveness between all these different points. And that's not necessarily a good thing. Meaning, I talked about this personal narrative. A good friend of both SPAF and mine from University of Central Florida, Mark Pollitt, is working on his PhD dissertation. Mark is the former director of the FBI's computer analysis response team, and he was, in fact, in charge of that during the 2001 9/11. So he's taken a much easier road and gone to academia. Retired academia working on his PhD. He did an excellent little white paper on the concept of the personal narrative and what that means to understanding what's going on. The personal narrative is really the life story of that individual, what is meaningful to them, what is not, what is information that tells you who they are, who's important to them, and what's important to them. And that's really what we're looking at when we're trying to connect all these dots. So what else can the data tell? How about linkages? Okay, you get 57 laptops. Okay, how do you tell who was talking to whom? How do you tell if that individual, it really is just a tourist that happened to be caught up at the same time that everybody else got arrested that were part of this supposed gang? How do you figure out who's connected, who's linked? Well, this is where you're going to have to start connecting the dots. This is where you're going to have to start saying, what is common to each of these laptops that wouldn't be common just by default? Gee, start looking at things like social networks, right? Who's been talking to whom? If 7 people are the group of 50, all have each other's contact information, birth date information, personal residence, cell phone, private email, and they're all friends on Facebook, that might mean something. Okay, that might be a clue. But without getting information like that, simply trying to guess who's related, we can't do that. And this is extremely important for answering a lot of the questions. Some of the most important questions are, what are the intentions of the individual? This is important from law enforcement, definitely important from the intelligence community. What is that person's intention? The intention of the individual as well as the intention of the group. This becomes important. There's a lot of debate right now whether we're actually seeing organized criminal activity or organized crime activity in cyberspace right now. The different vendor surveys would love you to think that this is happening in mass and they are so sophisticated that now you're going to have to pay more money for more sophisticated controls. Well, there's another camp that comes out from the traditional criminology area that says, whoa, slow down a minute. We have to differentiate between organized crime. And organized crime have a structure, they've been around for a long time, they have hierarchy, they have lines of communication, they run like a corporation. Versus criminal organizations, which could be, for the most part in cyberspace, they tend to be single actors who get together. It's kind of almost like a viral type of an event. They all decide, they get on the chat groups, hey, yeah, it would be really cool if we went and attacked so-and-so. An example of a criminal organization, or organization for a criminal, not an organized crime group. Anybody hear of 4chan? Okay, there's a couple of cases. They were actually part of the case coming up with the bomb threats that Purdue and other universities were getting a while back. Okay, now is that an organized crime group? It's a bunch of individuals that get together and decide, let's go swarm virtually something, right? Well, it might look like on the surface that it's a organized crime group, but it's really a criminal organization for the purposes of that one attack, and then after that they all spread out and do something different.
How about RBN?
What's that?
RBN.
RBN, yep. Okay, so that's important to be able to know what's going on there. Do you think there's going to be a difference in how you would go about dealing with a group that is an organized crime syndicate versus RBN or these other groups that get together? Certainly, it's going to be entirely different. How do you know it's not a foreign national or a foreign government supported actual cyber squad attacking that doesn't want to make it look like it's just an individual lone actor? So that becomes extremely important. These are questions that keep the intelligence community awake, and questions the courts want to know. Because obviously, the most obvious defense that comes up is, well, I'm not a member of this organized group. Happened to stumble on there and seemed like a good idea. What a dumb person I was. Meanwhile, they're being heavily financed and they're very sophisticated. That makes a huge difference. Social network, that becomes important. How big of a social network do they have? Who can they reach out to? Are you really just, basically looking at the tip of the iceberg? Technical capacity. What technical capacity does this group or this individual have? Resources. How much resources do they have? These are questions that, if you look at from an intelligence community perspective, you have your technical people. Technical people would get SPAF's computer. They'd be asked to basically do all their stuff to it in a forensically sound manner and pull everything out and make copies. Then the intelligence analyst comes on and says, okay, I have to take this data and somehow answer all these different questions. Are these things I can answer simply looking at this data that exists on that laptop? And the basic answer I always give them is, it depends. It depends if you and the technical person can get together and understand where that came from. If you're just going to look at things in a vacuum or not communicate, then it's going to be really, really hard to understand where those things occurred. Because yes, I found all these contacts, but where were they? Were they in the calendar, or were they in Slack space? Were they something that was deleted, it was off a web? Where did they exist? All that becomes extremely important. Organizational structure, organizational activities, environment. The last one is really important. Pattern of life. Wow. Why would the pattern of life be important from an intelligence perspective or from a simple investigative perspective? Pattern of life is, what does a daily activity of that individual look like? Why would that be important? Why would you want to know what they do first thing in the morning until they go to bed at night? Yeah. Oh, actually hit your... Talk loud. Look for abnormal behavior. Okay, but why? Why do we care about abnormal behavior?
They come in earlier than usual.
Okay, so you're starting to look for somebody that's exhibiting indications that they're doing something they shouldn't be, right? Yep. What else? Yeah, SPAF.
Because it could establish an alibi if someone is using their system.
Exactly. Okay, maybe that Trojan horse defense is true, or maybe they weren't there. Maybe somebody else did get on. Okay? It becomes important to understand, if you're going to try and do surveillance on this individual, what do you need to do? You need to understand what time they get up in the morning, where they go, what route they take to get to their job, whether what they do when they get there, what floor. You need to know all this information. You're looking for patterns of behavior. In your case, you'd be looking for patterns of behavior and then basically a deviation from that pattern. In SPAF's case, you're looking at the person says, hey, between 6 in the morning and 10, I'm at the gym, I'm not even home. How could I be on my computer and doing that? So patterns of the life pattern, that information actually can be answered with looking at the data, potentially, simply on that system. You can look for things like, gets up in the morning, first thing they do is they log in at this time and go check their email. Yep.
So just to return to an earlier point, this is a very interesting aspect of privacy,
Oh, yeah.
because we can say, all right, well, 3 days a week they're spending time over in an apartment that they're keeping separate from their house.
Yep.